I wanna hold them like they do in Texas, please. Fold them, let them hit me, raise it, baby, stay with me. I love it. Love game, intuition, play the cards with spades to start. And after he's been hooked, I'll play the one that's on his heart. I'll get him hard, show him what I got. I'll get him hard, show him what I got. Can't read my, no, we can't read my poker face. She's got me like nobody. Can't read my, no, we can't read my poker face. She's got me like nobody. Poker face, poker face. Poker face, poker face. I wanna roll with him, a hot pair we will be. A little gambling is fun when you're with me. Russian roulette is not the same without a gun. And baby, when it's love, if it's not rough, it isn't fun. I'll get him hard, show him what I got. I'll get him hard, show him what I got. Can't read my, no, we can't read my poker face. She's got me like nobody. Can't read my, no, we can't read my poker face. She's got me like nobody. Poker face, poker face. Poker face, poker face. I won't tell you that I love you, kiss or hug you, 'cause I'm bluffing with my muffin. I'm not lying, I'm just stunning.
I forgot to unmute. That's rookie plays. That's rookie mistakes. Rookie mistakes. But that's what you guys expect on this channel, okay? So, let me repeat the entire intro. For you guys that didn't like the intro music, all I can say is, hey, we're being equal here, okay? We did the 2000s, I don't actually remember when this song was released. It was probably like late 2000s or maybe early 2010s. I don't know. All the same. Next week will probably be 90s or 70s. So you guys may like that. You may not like that. We're going to be equal on this channel. We're going to give everybody their chance at good music or music that they like. Also, if you see me looking down at my phone, that is how I'm going to read chat for the stream. I forgot my laptop where I'm dog sitting at, so that's just how it's going to be. So we're going to talk about Stannis the Manus. We're going to be talking about, I think, specifically the early seasons of Game of Thrones and why I think the character just is not the same as in the books. For instance, in the books, Stannis is my favorite character. It's not really close. I love the character development of this character, and there's a number of reasons. We'll kind of break that down in today's stream. But when you look at the show is very one note with Stannis' character. They cut out a lot of the interesting parts of his character, and in a lot of ways, they really didn't get to, in my opinion, the actual character of Stannis. The closest we get is actually season 5, which is unfortunately where they also screw up his character at the very end. But the closest we ever get to humanizing Stannis as a character and understanding him more is season 5, which is a complete shame. We're going to talk about why that is in the show, why the two characters are so drastically different, even though in tone, right? Like people are talking about in the chat right now. Stephen Dillon, I'm assuming that's how you say his name, the actor who played Stannis, actually does a really good job with the character. Like his demeanor, his, I think the look even is pretty spot on for Stannis. Like the way that the character is portrayed by the actor, albeit the actor didn't really know who Stannis was all that much and didn't really like the character. He, for the most part, actually got down the mannerisms of the character. It's just that inner part of it, right? The part of Stannis that makes him so interesting is not how he holds himself, things like that. It's he has this complex background. And so we'll talk about in this stream specifically why I think season 2, I would even go as far as saying season 1 is such a detriment to the character of Stannis, because albeit Stannis' plotline is not bad in those seasons, I would say season 2, not season 1, because he's not really a plotline in season 1, but there's foreshadowing of the character we're going to see in season 2 that should have been in season 1 that just was never there. And also parts of Stannis' character were kind of just completely removed in the show, like actions that he does. So we'll talk a little bit about that in today's video. I really wanted to do this mainly because I've been covering Stannis a lot. This week's reread is about Renly's death. We talked about Renly's speech 2 weeks ago. A lot of that is very core and fundamental to understanding Stannis, because Stannis from here, a lot of it's going to be, okay, we're going to be pushing towards King's Landing. We don't have a lot of time to reflect on Stannis' character. And then book 3 starts to then kind of pay off those things set up earlier in book 2 with specifically Crescent and Davos, and also Catelyn as well. So that's kind of the premise of the stream. Let me get to chat, say hi to the people in chat, and we'll continue on with our spiel on Stannis. Northern Tommy says, the one true king. It is correct. Anyone who says honor, in my hearing, I will confront on the field of honor. Fair enough. Also, Ghost, yeah, it is. Poker Face was the song that was played, and all of that. But Lady Gaga for a Stannis stream is kind of crazy. Maybe I should have made this week 70s or 90s week, because I feel like that would have fit Stannis a bit more, but, it is what it is. What if Stefan Baratheon lived? That's an interesting question, right? Because one of the major things that really helps build Stannis as a character, and it's very tragic, is he loses his parents. So he sees this from a very early age. It really factors into, I think, his depression, the way he doesn't have a lot of happiness. So if his father and his mother, because if you're going with this, I would say, let's also say his mother survives. So let's say that their ship doesn't sink, they don't drown or whatever, that they both live, and that Stannis actually has both of his parental figures. It changes a lot. Like actually changes a ton. Because Stefan Baratheon was like that close friend to Aerys, right? The main trio is Tywin, Stefan, and then Aerys. Stefan Baratheon was in a position where he could have been gaining a lot of influence with Aerys. He could have become Hand of the King, all those kind of things. And so that could have drastically changed some of the events that occur with Robert Baratheon and Robert's Rebellion, if the Baratheons are like heavily tied to the crown because of the relationship between Stefan and Aerys. So like, it's a really tough one, because Stefan Baratheon's death really impacts a lot of things. It impacts the characters of Renly, Stannis, and Robert. Not having those parental figures lets Renly very much become like this spoiled kid and all that stuff, and it allows for Stannis to become the broody type. Like, Stannis was not always the broody type. It's really that his parents' deaths pushed him to that. So that's a great point. Like, if he lives, like, that could change everything. Like, the whole story could be altered at that point. So I don't have a great answer for you on that, but I do think the events of the story would be drastically different. Does Stannis fleeing King's Landing seem weird with his later characterization? I don't think so. No, I think Stannis is a commander. Like, he understands when he's lost a battle. Or are you talking about... So there's kind of two moments that you could be referring to, Mats. right? The one could be him fleeing King's Landing prior to book 1, or him fleeing King's Landing during the Battle of the Blackwater. Now that I'm kind of like thinking about it, I'm assuming you're talking about the first one. I think the first one makes complete sense. Like, Stannis leaves the situation because he knows Robert Baratheon won't believe him. He also doesn't necessarily want to trust or help Ned Stark because he holds some bitterness against Ned. We see that in the first conversation Stannis and Catelyn have. It's one of the first things that's brought up. So Stannis is in this place where he understands the situation, that the Baratheon kids are bastards, that there could likely be a war that's happening if Robert was to die. And given that Jon Arryn just died, who is to know that, like, Robert won't die next, or Ned will die next, like we see end up happening anyway. So I think for me, the idea of Stannis fleeing makes complete sense. Stannis does what Ned should have done. Stannis realizes he is a military commander. He's not a politician. Him fleeing to King's Landing is in a lot of ways to build up, his army and to plan, right? Getting Melisandre, all those types of things. So I think him fleeing King's Landing, at least if you're talking about the pre-Game of Thrones fleeing to King's Landing, makes perfect sense, right? Stannis understands his strengths, and he understands that he just does not have the influence, right, to try and convince Robert of all these things that the Lannisters are taking over, and that will likely lead to a civil war. But he also is seeing other things, right? He's seeing Renly try to put Marjorie on the throne, all this other stuff. Stannis is in a position where he just is not at his strongest, so I think it makes a lot of sense for him to flee. Were there any grease goblins in season 5? If you look closely, when Shireen is being burned, you can see one in the background. Yeah, and they're kind of pulling their teeth because Stannis is making the wrong decisions. You can also see one actually in Stannis when he fights the Boltons. When you see all the guys fleeing, right, you see one of them trying to drag Stannis back to retreat. Unfortunately, it got cut, because D&D just, they weren't ready for that. But, Renly's death is a top 3 moment in the series. Renly's death is one of the best written chapters. And this is why I think Catelyn is such an underrated POV. Like, she has some of the best string of chapters from the Renly. I would go back even further to Catelyn 2, with her actually meeting Renly and Marjorie and all that stuff in Renly's camp. Her stretch of chapters from that moment up until the Red Wedding is some of the strongest of the entire series. I mean, you could even go back further, right? You could go back to Robb being crowned. Like, I even think that you could go as far as saying that as well. But yeah. The show cutting Renly, his speech, and Stannis' later speech was a clear indicator that they didn't get Stannis. Yeah, Matt, so we're going to come back to that because I want to kind of break it down from season to season. But that's it's a huge part. I think there's so much of Stannis' arc that gets cut that's really important. Do you think Stannis will ever get confronted about what happened with Renly's death again? I think it'll definitely be brought up, right? I don't think that the sins of Stannis' past are going to be forgotten. George doesn't seem like that kind of writer. But if you're trying to reference this in terms of, will we see someone like Brienne or Loras confront him about it? I don't think so. It just doesn't make a lot of sense right now given where the story is. Brienne currently is wrapped up in the Riverland plot, and let's say that's finished by the halfway mark. You could very easily see if Brienne and Arya meet up, both of them going north, but will they then make it in time to see Stannis, who I think will be the last chapter of the book in Winds of Winter? If it's 2 books, I expect it to be the end of the second book, whatever you want to say. I think Stannis is going to die to the others. I don't expect him to get, like, executed by Brienne like the show went with. So, in one way, I think that, yes, he will be confronted with the past of Renly and the things that occurred there. If, maybe, because, again, Catelyn did spread that rumor that it was Stannis who did it and all that stuff. I think it's possible, definitely, that he'll be confronted by it, but I don't think it'll be necessarily with Brienne or Loras or whoever. If we don't get Lord Snow as Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, Stannis is a good second choice. I'd rather see Ramsay become king than Bran. I unfortunately don't think either one of those people will become king. I think it's much more likely Bran of those 3 options becomes king, or even Ramsay. I mean, of the 4, it's much more likely that Bran becomes king, but I also am not a huge fan of Bran becoming king. It just have to be how George does it. No, I meant before Game of Thrones. Yeah, I kind of thought through that one, Matt, and I figured that's what you meant. But I hope I answered that question for you. Hi, Ashley. Hi, Kara. How are you guys? Can't hear very well. Is that my stream, or are you saying you yourself cannot hear well? Let me know, guys, if you guys want me to boost up audio or anything like that. I see Greece is starting us off with high treasons. What did I do? What did I do? What did I do, Ashley? What did I do this time? Hi, Sir Tony. How are you? Stannis and Renly's Peach Talk is definitely in my top 3 favorite conversations in the book. Barristan fighting Kraz is my favorite. Yeah, there's definitely some great conversations. I would put conversations Renly and Stannis about the Peach probably my favorite. I think Stannis will pledge his sword to Daenerys. I could never see that happening. Stannis believes at this point that he is the rightful heir. I don't think he'll bend to Daenerys. And you also got to think, if Stannis bends to Daenerys, that means he's going to live through Winds of Winter. He has to live through a good portion of A Dream of Spring, like at least halfway through it. I just don't see that happening. I get the idea that people want Stannis to live, but I just don't see it happening. I don't like. This is my thing, right? If we go off of what George has told us, that Stannis is going to burn Shireen, I don't see a situation in which Stannis, after that point, because that means he's in a very desperate position that he does that somehow goes at least all right enough to where he then is able to live to then back Daenerys. I just don't see it happening. Do you believe HBO will do justice with Egg and Dunk? I think they will. Just given what George R. R. Martin said about the show, given how much material they have, source material wise, I think that they'll do it probably good enough. I don't know if it's gonna be perfect. I'm very worried about the 6 episodes. I think Preston Jacobs and Red Team Review, their video talking about A Night of the Seven Kingdoms and it being pushed back, I thought was really, really good. And one of the points they talked about a lot was the pacing of it. And I totally agree with them. I've talked about this in the past. The pacing of the show is something I really worry about, because will HBO feel the need to, or I should really say the Night of the Seven Kingdom team, will they feel like they'll need to put in things to end episodes on more of a bang, right? Because Game of Thrones never had that problem. Game of Thrones always ended, at least for the first season, the first couple seasons, I would say, always ended with this big cliffhanger. Bran falling out of a window, Ned getting arrested, Ned's death. You can go on, but they didn't have that problem. House of the Dragon didn't have that problem in terms of they had really good things they could end episodes with, but they somehow struggled with those. Like, for instance, Rhaenyra and Laenor's wedding ends on a really weird note. The Daemon and the Stepstone stuff was set up to be a really good finish. It was kind of weird again. So I really worry with how are we going to keep the average viewer's attention, just given the fact that, you look at the major events that happen in the Dunk and Egg story, the first novella, there's like 2 or 3 big things that you would end your episodes on. But outside of that, like, how do you end episode 1? How do you end episode 2? I'm really interested to see how they do. Again, Tony, I'm on board with the idea that I think that Stannis burning Shireen doesn't make narrative sense in terms of where we are in the story. Like, you would have to assume that Stannis does a number of things that it would just be hard to accomplish. Like, he either needs to take Winterfell relatively quickly. Like, I'm talking relatively quickly, because Shireen would have to then get there. Something would have to happen, and that Shireen is burned. Like, I agree with you. I don't think that it makes sense for Stannis to burn Shireen at the current state of the story. Could that change? George could write that really well. I just don't know how we get there. But that's what George has said. So until George comes out and says that, yes, I'm not actually doing that, that's what I'm going to believe. Even though I don't think he should go that route. I think he backs himself into a corner making Shireen do that. Also, Stannis knowing Daenerys' claim doesn't really matter. Daenerys is a woman. If we look at what Stannis has talked about in the past, he's talked about how Rhaenyra should not have been queen. That it should have been Aegon. That's his belief system. So he already believes that women, shouldn't be there. And I know it's different because of like Shireen, for instance, but the right of conquest at this point makes Stannis the king. That's what I think Stannis would believe. I just don't see him bending to Daenerys. I don't see that happening. I think Stannis's like whole plan is to try and unite Westeros against the threat of the others, which I think Jon will inevitably take over. I just don't think he'll have the time to do it because of the depleted Northern power, and I think of his own power not being great enough to rival that of the others. Hi April, how are you? Hi Maz, how are you? I mean, we can disagree, Tony, but that again, that's my thought process. That's yours. I do want to get into why Game of Thrones and all that stuff, the actual show differed, but I think this is some good conversation. Miguel, I actually agree with you. Clash of Kings is my favorite book as well. Also, Maz, hope your cold gets better, and Feast for Crows for Euron makes complete sense. So let's talk about it. So I've been doing my rereads of the books, and I've gone heavily in them. I'm about halfway, a little over halfway with the Clash of Kings. And the one thing that's really stuck in the back of my mind is, especially in the Clash of Kings, how much the show combines Stannis' plotline or cuts things from Stannis' plotline. So, like, what do I mean? So let's go to a Game of Thrones. Stannis' plotline in a Game of Thrones, it's not necessarily a plotline because we're not with the character, but it's introduced within a Game of Thrones. We know that Stannis is missing from King's Landing. He was apparently very close to Jon Arryn, going to visit, these brothels, and he was going to visit Gendry and all this stuff with Jon Arryn. Jon Arryn mysteriously dies. We're hearing nothing from Dragonstone, but it seems like Stannis is gathering swords, may have this sorceress of whatnots. And we learn about Stannis' character through book one. We learn about how he's this person that wanted to outlaw brothels, and he was somebody that is kind of I wouldn't say cruel, but he's a very hard man, right? And so we kind of already have this built-up persona of who Stannis is before we even get to book two. We already have an idea of what characters think about him, like Renly, like Littlefinger, like Ned himself, all that type of stuff. So us as an audience are kind of like all these outsiders into Stannis' actual character, which is great because it then tests our knowledge of the character as we go into book two, and right away it happens. So then we start book two, which is really great. And again, the show doesn't even act like Stannis exists. We get like one mention of Stannis, that he should be the heir from Ned, towards the second half of the show. We don't really hear anything else of Stannis up until season two. So as we get into season two and we get into A Clash of Kings, right away there's a very heavy, how should I put this, importance on Stannis' plotline. It's the starting of the book. We get Crescent, who has one of the longest chapters of the series, a great start to the book. We learn really all about Stannis. The first book is the first chapter of A Clash of Kings is all about introducing us into Stannis. From somebody that knows him extremely well, Crescent is like a father figure to Stannis. And so you see this character that, yes, can be cold. He's someone that is very duty bound. He's somebody that doesn't have a lot of enjoyment. That's described in, for instance, the feast hall that Crescent goes into. And we're learning about why Stannis is doing all these things. Stannis has no allies. Renly is declaring himself a king, and you have Robb who's fighting Tywin and all that stuff, and the illegitimacy of the Lannister claim. But you see this character of Stannis, and you start to understand why he is the person that he is, right? Of his parents dying when he was a young child, and all the things that he's kind of been put through, all the slights that have been done to him, whether that be by Robert, whether that's by Ned or Renly, all these belief slights that he has, you start to understand a full picture of the character that he is in the book. Whereas in the show, they combine Crescent and they combine Davos 1 into a couple of scenes. So this is really damaging because both of those chapters in Davos 1 and also Crescent in the prologue have a lot to do with the rationale of the character of Stannis. And it gives us different perspectives into the person, right? So we've already had, after book 1, our preconceived version of what we think Stannis is like. We then got a much more intimate view of Stannis through the eyes of Crescent, which might be even a little bit more nice to Stannis, right? It might be the good point of view of Stannis, where we completely understand the character. And then Davos is like our next point of view, right? Davos is somebody that's been basically given a life by Stannis. Davos was a smuggler. He was somebody that didn't have a lot of prospects for his future. And Stannis, albeit a very, difficult trade-off, right? Davos gets to be somebody that now is able to give a good life for his children and things like that. So you see different perspectives into the character. And that only gets better once we get to Catelyn, because then Catelyn becomes our other point of view, right? She's somebody with one of these rival factions to Stannis. So we get to see how that kind of rivalry would work there. And so I really like the way that it's not just one note, right? Yes, we do see this, what we saw in the show, right? Stannis being very duty bound and right to the point, and he's kind of cold at times, and he's very serious all the time. But the show never takes the time to understand why he is that way. He just is, right? In the show, he is just this guy. We don't know why he became this person. We don't know what motivates him in terms of why he acts like this. There's nothing there. He's just this character that, yes, albeit is still interesting. Like, I still enjoy seeing the Stannis character of the show, but he's not really Stannis. It's like they took half of Stannis' character, the outside part of Stannis, and they said, this is Stannis. There's nothing more to the character. It's like if they stripped the Hound, for instance, of his backstory and what makes him so interesting, and that's why so many people love him. Not only is he an entertaining character, the actor who plays him is great, it's also that we understand this character. We understand his horrible background with his brother, his family, and the reason that he doesn't like knights, and why he does some of his actions that he does. You understand him completely. It's like if you took that away from Sandor and he was just the Hound persona. Like, there was no Sandor, it was just the Hound. It's like that. That's the perfect way I would describe Stannis in the show versus the book. Is he's very surface level. We don't ever try to get deeper into his character. So that really, in a lot of ways, can sum up season 2 right away. And, as we get into the books, they just take away scenes that make no sense to take away. Not only do they take away Crescent and a lot of Davos stuff and combine it into like one kind of episode, like one bits of scenes here and there, they then go to, I think, the most important part of not only this book, but also A Storm of Swords for Stannis, the take away Renly's speech. Now, I made multiple videos on Renly's speech, but it's so important because it takes what's so foundationally important to the character of Stannis and it reflects it into Renly, where Renly is one side of the coin where he has too much pleasure, he has too much enjoyment. He doesn't, experience life how most people would, right? Having a good balance of enjoyment and things they have to do, right? Like work, for instance. And it's like this. Stannis is somebody that works all the time. He has no free time to have fun with his friends or his family. He doesn't enjoy those things, versus somebody that never works, is handed everything, and, only has pleasures. That's kind of what you're looking at with the characters of Stannis versus Renly, where there should be this happy medium between, but there isn't. And then, so Stannis having to make a very difficult decision, something that haunts him after the fact, is the only way that he can do his duty is by killing his own brother. He has to kill Renly to gain the support and try and take the throne, because that is his duty and that's what he thinks that he should do. So it's a lot more complex. There's complexities to it. So not only they strip any idea of Stannis caring about his brother, like being haunted by the actions he's done after the fact, they take away the most interesting part of Renly's speech's section of the story. And so again, it's not like terrible in the show, right? But it's so surface level. It's not like we delve into it. And that's the kind of the problem, right? That's a lot of the problem. And for the most part, when you then go to like season, and this is the other part of it, right? Is that they also take away in season 2 the fact that Stannis has his own mind. Like, he's not somebody that is just being manipulated by Melisandre. Like, Stannis openly says he doesn't know if this Red God stuff is really a thing. He doesn't buy into it, but it's more that he's using it as a tool. In the show, it's more like Melisandre using Stannis, whereas like at the very beginning of Clash of Kings, it's more like Stannis is using Melisandre, while also Melisandre is using Stannis to gain influence, power, all those things. Like, it's very much like a both are manipulating both type situation, whereas in the show, they make it where Stannis is just this cruel, kind of stone cold guy that's getting manipulated because he's dumb by Melisandre. And don't get me wrong, in the books, we start to see that pull, right? In book 3, we start to see Stannis start to give in to Melisandre. She's gaining more confidence, or not her, but she's gaining more influence over Stannis, and that's pulling him, closer and closer to her than it is to someone like Davos, for instance. And you see that battle playing within Stannis throughout the entire book. The show tries to do this, but the problem is, in season 2, you already think Stannis is fully being pulled by Melisandre. Like, he's fully manipulated by her. Like, there's only one scene that's like, okay, Stannis maybe isn't fully Melisandre, in the scene with Davos and him, where Davos tells Stannis, maybe you shouldn't bring Melisandre along because it's going to be her victory. It's the only time you see that in the show. So when you get to season 3, which is, I would say season 3 and 4, I guess, which is really supposed to be a pull of the forces behind Stannis, one side has already been pulled all the way over to Melisandre, so there's no tug of war, really. Like, that's kind of the issue. So that's my biggest issues with Stannis in the show, is that we kind of lose that. We lose any type of actual character of Stannis. And what's even crazier is, I will get to chat here in a second here, guys, is when we get to by the time we get to season 5, it's like Stannis' arc is pretty much over, right? Like, the show doesn't really care about Stannis all that much. Like, he's served his purpose of, defeating the wildlings, all that stuff. Now he's just like a character we need to get rid of. Like, we need to get rid of him quickly. We got to start cutting the characters so that we can get to, because D&D wanted to be done with the show, we got to get these plot lines ironed down. And unfortunately, they actually somehow figured out how to write Stannis in season 5. Until the very end, of course, but that's a whole different story. So let me get back to chat a little bit, respond to any comments or chat that I find relevant to the topic. But let me know what you guys think about Stannis early on in the show. Like, not just the later seasons, like season 3, 4, and 5, like even the earlier seasons in 2 and 1. I wish they made Stannis more like book Stannis. I didn't watch the whole show though. Yeah, April, like, the closest it ever gets is season 5, where he actually starts to have internal conflicts. Like, I actually think that the way that they did the Shireen plot line of season 5 was actually pretty good. Like, it was foreshadowed in previous seasons, and the way that they actually humanized Stannis in terms of his love for his daughter and things like that. We know it's to make Shireen's death more heartbreaking, but in my opinion, I actually like the way they did it. They actually pulled on what Stannis is in the books, where it's like, there's this idea of, okay, duty versus, his own, like, what he wants to do, and he doesn't want to burn his daughter, but that also seems to be the thing that he has to do, all that kind of stuff. I do actually like a lot of season 5 stuff with Stannis, where we actually get to see him as a character, not as this just kind of stereotyped, hard, cold guy. He actually has personality to him. I love A Clash of Kings, especially Dany's chapters. The show totally destroyed her character. So, Cheryl, I have a differing opinion on that. I personally dislike Daenerys in Book 2. I just don't like... Book 2 for me with Daenerys is the most, I think, apparent version of Dany. In all of the books she appears, where her story feels like it has no relevance to what's going on in the rest of the story. It feels completely disconnected. I just don't really like Daenerys in Karth. Also, her first chapter just kind of feels like it's like a catch-up, like, epilogue chapter, it feels like, in my opinion, for her journey in Book 1. It's like a reminder, and it kind of somewhat helps conclude some of the stuff that was going on with Book 1. I love her in Book 1, don't get me wrong, and I think she's good in Book 3. I just am not a fan of Book 2 until the House of the Undying stuff. Like, the House of the Undying stuff is one of the best chapters of the entire series. I just, outside of that, like, her 4 other chapters, I just don't really enjoy that much, but I'm happy you enjoy them. The stream, I'm attached to a Bluetooth speaker, but still not hearing the stream very well. Well, if anybody else in chat is having trouble hearing the stream, let me know. I don't know if it's on your end or my end, Kara. For me, like, I can kind of see the audio level a little bit, and I think it should be fine. But if you guys are having an issue, it might be, you know, trying to get it to YouTube. Sometimes there's issues with, because it goes from a program on my computer that then sends it to YouTube, and that's how the stream goes up. But yeah, also I'm trying to figure out a way to increase like how good the stream looks on stream. It has nothing to do with my settings. It's just the problem is when I record videos, my camera is not connected to my computer at all. I just let my computer or my camera do its own thing, and then I just sync up the audio later, and it does 4K. So when I connect it to my computer, it is only 1080p, but it doesn't look like it doesn't look that good, in my opinion. It does not look that good compared to my recording level. So I got to figure that out. I don't know if I got to get like a capture card situation or something, like I used to do with my Xbox when I used to stream gaming stuff very long time ago. I do think this is great conversation, though. I do agree with you know, Tony, Ashley. I think I'm gonna add that to my video list of maybe doing a video of would Stannis back Daenerys. I think that's a great like topic. So let me write that down. I think that's good. I've been the last like, I don't know, week and a half. There's just been some really great ideas from stream, from just like my own brain that I've really been like looking forward to doing. So I appreciate you guys for that. Would Stannis back Dany? And also, I cannot type and talk. If you guys have not noticed, I can't do that at the same time. In Stannis POV, there are deeper, older laws in regards to siding with your blood over your lineage, Lord. Yeah, I mean, again, that just kind of circles back to the conversation we were having earlier in the stream. Like, would Stannis back Daenerys and how he views the claims? But not the purpose of this video, so I'm not going to talk about too much. Rip Rob Stark. I have a tattoo of him on my arm with arrows impaling him and his wolf on his head with a crown. That's a really cool tattoo. Also, I was Rob Stark for Halloween, so you might like that. I don't think Robert accused Stannis of treachery for not reaching Dragonstone in time. It's just he was pissed at him for arriving late and letting the remaining Targaryens get away. Yeah, no, I think that Robert was just upset with Stannis, like, not getting there in time. Like, it was more like an annoyance. Like, it wasn't something like Stannis thought, or Robert thought that Stannis was, like, helping the Targaryens or doing some sort of treason. I just think that Robert was just annoyed with Stannis because the last Targaryens got away. Like, they were in the palm of their fingertips, all that stuff to get rid of the Targaryens, and it wasn't done. The real question would be, what would Stannis do if he captured them? Like, if Stannis captured Daenerys and Viserys, what would he have done? Right? Like, what were the orders here? Were the orders to capture them and they were going to become, what, wards of the crown? Were they going to be killed like Tywin did? Were the orders for Stannis and the men that he was bringing to kill them? Like, that's another fascinating question. What were the actual orders there? I don't know if there's an answer to that in the books. I don't recall anything like that, but that's just an idea. I'd love to hear what you guys think in the chat about, like, what do you think Stannis would do if he caught them? I'm gonna add that as well for the list. Orders on capture of Dany. Well, yeah, let's do that. That's a quick note. I understand what that means. Hi, Cannibal. How are you? Also, how's everybody doing in chat? This is a nice Monday, a pretty busy Monday. But yeah, it's kind of crazy because I'm kind of done with school now, and it still feels like I'm really busy. I had to run over to some places, go to the bank, go to Walmart, taking care of a dog, which takes up a lot of time and stuff. But yeah. Robert never should have been king. I agree, April. I agree. Don't forget to smash that like button like the Lord of Lights smashes the darkness. You know what, Maz? I like that. That's a good plug. I thought you were going a totally different way. As soon as I saw it, don't forget to smash the like button. I kind of saw the darkness thing below. I thought you were going to say something about Melisandre. So I like that. I like that. We kept it, a little classy. Robert was a below average king. Jon Arryn was the real problem. Tywin as hand would have made the Seven Kingdoms great again. I do think that Tywin being hand of the king, I don't think it would have solved the issue, but I think it would have helped. Like, I think it would have helped in terms of, I think Tywin is just a better ruler than Jon Arryn is. The issue you still have is Robert is the king. Robert's a bad king. There's only so much you can do, right? So I think that like Tywin really would have helped with corruption. Like I think somebody like Littlefinger would have never been put in power. That solves a ton of issues. I do think Jon Arryn is partly the problem. Ricky came in the chat saying you're fine, bro. What does this mean? What does that even mean, Ricky? What does that mean? Are you talking about audio issue? What are you talking about? Also, everybody say a nice shout out to Ricky. You know, we love our voice of Old Town and his corruption towards the Maesters and such, especially the Greens. But he's for the people. Just remember that. Remember that. Also, we'll be recording a pretty cool collab tomorrow. I'm excited to see how that goes. But yeah, we may have good conversation. We may have arguments. Well, who knows? Who knows? Hopefully we don't have arguments. Hopefully it's a very civil conversation. But, you know. You guys are really enjoying this talk about Stannis backing Daenerys. Oh my god, you guys are writing paragraphs in here. Stannis is a very flawed character. His contradictions are part of the fun. I don't buy his whole, oh, I don't want to be king, but it's my duty thing, at least not early on. I think it's like a mixture. I think it's, so Ricky, I think the best way of putting it is he is the middle child, right? So he's the middle child. He's been in Robert's shadow his entire life. And I think it's interesting because you think about Stannis, he's finally going to get his recognition, right? As being the true heir. He's going to become king. He did, he was so smart. He figured out the Baratheon kid thing. And, you even look at some of his past grievances. It's him not being acknowledged, right? Him not being made hand of the king. Him not being given Storm's End. Like, I think there's a little bit in Stannis that, yes, he is very duty and honor bound, all that stuff. But I think they're also like, Ricky, I think you're right. Like, is there that layer of just Stannis wants a little bit of attention, right? His parents, unfortunately, died early on. He hasn't had a lot of attention. Crescent even talks about that in his own POV. Like, I think there's a little bit of that too, which I do like. Stannis' character development is so underrated. Agreed. And the show, unfortunately, didn't want to go that route. Yeah, the audio. Yeah, I was about to say, like, Ricky, were you coming in and be like saying I'm fine? Like, that's kind of wild. First thing you say, but thank you, appreciate that. Also, Ricky, I was gonna message you this on Discord, but for tomorrow, I'm gonna just in case, because I've been doing this with some of the other collabs I've been doing. I'm gonna record our audio as a backup. I'm gonna have a backup audio file that I'm gonna make. That's worst case scenario because then you'd have to sync audio and stuff, or I would have to whatever happens. But Ricky, how do you feel that people are spelling your name wrong in chat? Wow, so Ricky doesn't think I'm fine. That's crazy, chat. That's crazy. That's crazy. You hear that, chat? You hear that? That's crazy. I know, Ricky, I know you have a girlfriend and that, but that's crazy. That's crazy. Do we know Stannis' opinions on dragons? I don't know. I don't recall him having any like deep thoughts on the dragons, but I don't know. All right, so moving on. Let's talk then season 5. So season 5, we get into Stannis' character. He's at the wall, and for some reason, this is what blows my mind. For some reason, we've gone through 4 seasons, really 3. It's really 3 seasons for Stannis. There's not really been any character development like at all. Like they tried in season 3 and 4, but there wasn't all that much there. It was really just it was more character development for Davos than anything. And then we get to season 5. And we have Jon and Stannis' dynamic, which seems to get across a little bit more of who Stannis is as a person. We see him interacting with like Sam and Gilly, showing a little bit more of a, I don't know, like a friendlier side to Stannis that you just don't see. And, as his campaign, starts, we start to see Stannis a lot more with his daughter and Shireen. And we see that throughout the season. Like we see how Stannis was trying to save his daughter, even when people are telling him not to. And it's just like a really gut punch scene when you have Shireen like hugging her father. It shows that Stannis has any side of a character of being like this likable person, that like any reason why somebody would actually like him. Like he tries to be a good father to his daughter, right? And so you see that kind of throughout the season, even when he talks to Shireen right before he's going to burn her, and he's kind of basically telling her his problem, right? That, he has a duty, and they're all going to probably die, and this is what he's being fed by Melisandre, who unfortunately Stannis has been under her spell the entire show, basically. But he finally has this moment where like he defies her for a little while. Like he defies her. He's like, I'm not doing it. This is outrageous. I'm not talking to you anymore. So he finally sees some development, okay? And what happens is Stannis does end up burning his daughter, of course, and that's a very controversial part of season 5. I personally, given the foreshadowing, given the Stannis of the show, don't compare him to the Stannis of the book. Stannis of the book is completely different. There'd have to be a lot more that happens for Stannis to do this in the book, but Stannis in the show, it makes sense. Like, it makes sense that Stannis would burn his daughter. Like, everything kind of had been pointing to that the whole time. Like, and Stannis has never been shown as this loving person or this person that cares about his family all that much. Like, that only happens in season 5 because D&D knew they were going to kill her. It's the same idea of making Catelyn more likable. They're trying to make Stannis a little bit more likable, so then you hate him, type situation. I like that aspect of it. The things I don't like about season 5 is that they really blunder Stannis as a military commander. We just got done showing him being this amazing commander that's able to beat the wildlings, even though they vastly outnumbered him. And, we've kind of talked him up a little bit throughout the show of being a good military commander. And then you have Ramsay with 10 good men just completely wreck his camp. No sentries anywhere, no outriders, nothing. Okay. And then they do it again where Stannis, with no horses, no nothing, walks up to Winterfell with foot and just dies. Like, what? Like, his final line is good. His final line when he dies to Brienne, like, go on, do your duty, like that's very Stannis-like. That's exactly how I imagine Stannis would die. But, like, everything of, like, how we got there with the Bolton side of things was terrible. It was awful. It was just horrible writing. It's so crazy though, because season 5, Stannis' plot line up until like the last episode is like one of the best plot lines of the book. Or not the book, the show. It adapts it from the book. Adapts. But yeah. So then Stannis dies. And that's it. And he never gets brought up really ever again outside of like one episode? Like season 5, the end of it, and then he gets brought up a little bit later on when Brienne says that she killed him, and then the stuff with Shireen, like with Melisandre and Davos, where I forget the actor who plays Davos. I have his face, and I have it. It's Liam. Is it Liam Cunningham or something like that? I don't know. I don't remember if that's exactly his name, but he gives a brilliant performance. When the revelation of him finding out what happened to Shireen, all that stuff. But, yeah, so that's kind of the end of Stannis in the show. Stannis in the show is a character that is very much a stereotyped character. doesn't have a lot of depth to him. He's an entertaining character when he's on screen, in my opinion, but he's not really the character of the book. There's no complexity there. Or there's no inner conflicts there with the character. And when they finally started looking like they might have some functionality of the character, they throw it all away just because they didn't want the Stannis character anymore. They didn't know what to do with the character. They wanted to chop down all these characters that they didn't really care about anymore. For instance, Barristan is another one of those characters. They wanted to have shock moments, right? That's why Shireen is killed. Well, I guess that's from George, but they wanted to get rid of characters. How do you do that? Well, you do a shocking thing where, Stannis kills his own daughter. This then leads to Sleece killing herself. This then leads Stannis to doing this stupid charge and getting killed. So there you go. The Stannis plot is gone. And now the only remnants left of the Stannis plot, well, they're now with Jon, with Davos and Mel. So yeah, that's all I'll say. But yeah. What do you think about the handling of Stannis in season 5? That's an interesting discussion. I know there's people that really hate season 5. I don't hate season 5. I think season 5 is really underrated because, yes, on one hand, it has horrible plot lines. Stuff like Sansa's plot line, the Dorne plot line, pretty bad. When those plot lines are in the episodes, it's pretty hard to watch. But when they have the other plot lines in it, like the northern plot lines with Jon and Stannis, Daenerys' plot line in season 5 is really well handled from the books, in my opinion. Tyrion, I think his plot line, they cut down a lot of what made his plot line in the books not that good, in my opinion. They did a great job, I think, with adapting that in terms of Tyrion stuff. I think Cersei, the King's Landing arc from A Feast for Crows is, really good on screen. It's a season that has its highs and its lows. And usually the lows are the stuff that they just didn't follow from the book, and the highs are usually the stuff they did. So season 5 is one of those ones where it just varies, like episode to episode. It has no consistency at all. I've talked about season 5 and season 6 a lot. I really, really, really dislike season 6 and how much praise it gets because, in my opinion, it's a season completely has no logic to it, is boring for pretty much the whole season. Nothing really happens in it. And then all of a sudden it has 2 really big episodes, one of which, the Battle of the Bastards, is one of the worst logical battles ever. It's beautiful on screen. It's entertaining as hell to watch. Makes no sense when you think about it. When you take 2 seconds, it makes no sense. The Marine stuff that also complements the Battle of the Bastards is horrible. Yeah. And then the finale is good. The finale is definitely good. I won't say anything on the finale, but the finale is really good. Anything else in chat before we head out here that I want to kind of talk about? Got here late. Do you think Stannis will sacrifice Shireen to keep the others from crossing the wall? Nothing else would make sense. So that is exactly what I think. Like, the problem of how do we get to that point, though, is what bothers me. Because you got to remember, Shireen is still at the wall. So we know that Stannis' plot line, at least for I would say at least the first half, right? Because you're going to have the Winds of Winter sample chapter that we've already gotten. You then have to have whatever happens at the Battle of Ice take place. You then have to have a recovery chapter, like the aftermath of what happened. Then you have to have, okay, what's our plan? What's the next plan? Building up to Stannis taking Winterfell. Then you have to have Stannis actually take Winterfell. Now, this is one of many possible solutions to this idea of Shireen being burned. But you then have to have him take Winterfell. At that point, Shireen then and the Queen's men have to then come back. They have to come to Winterfell. They have to take that journey. And then something has to occur at this point that Stannis realizes he needs to burn his daughter. Again, he hasn't even seen his daughter. There's been no development into him burning his daughter since what? And there isn't any foreshadowing to him burning his daughter really at all either. Yes, you can say the Edric Storm stuff, but I think it's way different. Edric Storm reminds Stannis of Robert so much, and that's where a lot of that hate and distaste comes from. But also, Stannis doesn't know Edric Storm really at all. Like, he doesn't know him as a person. You're talking about his own daughter. Like, there just hasn't... And you think about how much restraint that Stannis had with the Edric Storm stuff. It's only when Stannis gets pushed to that edge, right? He's coming off the Battle of the Blackwater, how badly that went for him. Melisandre then, like, proving that, yes, Robb Stark, Joffrey, all these people are going to die. They die. It takes a lot for him to actually get to the point where maybe he would burn Edric Storm. It's so different when you get to Shireen. It would have to be a situation that is just so bad. Everything is going so badly for Stannis that he sees that the only way is to burn his daughter. The only way I can see that happening is one of two things. The first one being an idea of like the others have already broken through the wall. Whether that's because of the Horn of Winter, or whether that's some other thing that you think, that has become such an issue, and that Stannis is, underpowered. He's underwhelming, right? In terms of he doesn't have the men. The North has been in war after war. Like, the North just does not have the men to fight the others by themselves. Stannis decides, okay, because of this prophecy, because of what Melisandre's telling him, he kills his daughter. And that is kind of, maybe that's in the epilogue. Maybe we get to Stannis after all that's happened, and maybe he's seeing how things are going, and he, dies giving his life for the others, for giving his life for everyone else so that they can try and regroup and all that stuff. That's a way I could see it happening, but it would just take a lot to get to that point. The other idea would be, okay, well, Stannis loses the Battle of Ice or Winterfell, one of the two, and that makes him retreat to the wall, and then he burns Shireen because he sees how hopeless the situation is. But then again, like, he also has Justin Massey, he already has the backing of the Iron Bank, so he's going to have more soldiers coming in, you would assume. So why would he burn his daughter just because he's lost that battle? He knows he has reinforcements coming in. So, yeah, right now it's very unclear how Stannis is going to burn his daughter. I think the most likely idea is going to be it's something to do with the others, and it has really nothing to do with likely the Boltons. I have crafted up a theory that maybe Melisandre glamours Shireen, so that Stannis thinks he's burning somebody else, but he actually burned Shireen, and that's because Melisandre knows that maybe this is what she thinks, that Shireen has to be burned for them to have a chance, and so he does that, or she does that. She glamours Shireen, and so Stannis burns her. Stannis would then still burn his daughter, but he would do it unknowingly. That, I think, works a lot better. It would be a much more easier to pull off as well. So I could see that happening, but it's very difficult to predict. But great question. I've talked about that numerous times. Yeah, everybody that likes season 6 always points to the Battle of the Bastards, the finale, and then also the Hodor stuff, which the Hodor stuff ages really badly. Like, when it came out, yes, that was a great moment, big payoff for the story. But in retrospect, you look back on it and you go, this was also that Bran could survive. Bran does nothing with his powers and just eventually becomes king. Bran never uses this time travel stuff we see here with Hodor ever again when you think it would be useful. It's a episode that is aged very poorly. And I talked about the Battle of the Bastards, and I've talked about the finale. The finale is a legitimate, yes, that's a good point to look at and go, yeah, that's a great way to end the episode and the season, I should say. Even with all the hate, I really enjoy season 7 and 8. I'm glad you do. I just don't. I personally, I really struggle with the last 2 seasons because I just don't find much in those 2 seasons to enjoy. Like, the few things I enjoy from the later seasons is like Brienne being knighted, Olenna Tyrell's last scene, Daenerys with the Dothraki. Even though the battle is completely why is she burning the resources? Makes no sense. But I like actually seeing Daenerys and an idea of what maybe Aegon the Conqueror could have been with Balerion. That part of it's really cool. I would have liked to see the sides of Stannis we get through Asha's eyes in the books. I love that scene where he apologizes about Asha's mother's plight. Yeah, I agree. And that's what makes Stannis so great, is because we don't have a defined version of who Stannis really is, because we see him through so many different eyes, right? We see him through Asha's eyes as well, adding on to, the other characters that we see earlier on in the books. Theon will now be one of those characters as well. It just adds to all these different people thinking they know who Stannis is, but we still don't really know because we're never in his head. It's what makes Stannis so great of a character. It'd be great to end on him as the finish of the next book. finally seeing maybe what Stannis thinks about, like what is going on in his head. Like we all know Cersei's a fantastic POV to read because it's just so interesting what happens in her head. Stannis could be somewhat interesting to that, or somewhat similar to that. A POV from Shireen when it happens would be diabolical. That would be horrifying. That would be the darkest chapter ever. Like, yeah, I don't need to say much else. Okay, I got Davos's name right, Liam Cunningham. I thought so. I don't know. It's been a long time since I've looked up, actors and stuff like that. I think as it stands now, it makes more sense for Melisandre to act alone without Stannis' consent to burn Shireen, or Selyse gives her the okay. I agree. 100% I agree. Right now, it makes more sense that Melisandre does some sort of action that leads her to burn Shireen. That's what makes the most sense. The time travel in that Hodor episode is also inconsistent. Agreed, 100%. Mel could possibly glamour herself to look like Davos to give the illusion it wasn't her. Yeah, I don't think she would glamour as Davos though, because why would Davos burn Shireen? I don't think she would do that. I think if she was gonna glamour anyone, ow, I had just hit my elbow. It would be Selyse. I could see her glamoring Selyse. That makes a lot of sense to me. We got Quentin burning, so yeah, but see, here's the thing, April. As a Quentin hater, that was more enjoyable than it was horrifying. Also, it's kind of a different scenario. Like, if you're going through Shireen's head in a POV where she's being burned, like, Quentin's, like, burning just happens. Like it just, dragon, boom, he's gone. Here, it would be like, Shireen is being led up to the altar or whatever, and you're in her head, and she's, like, screaming for help, and she's being led to this thing where, presumably, maybe Melisandre has this torch, like it is in the show, right? Just think of the show, but you're in Shireen's head. This little girl that is being burned, and she has no idea why. Like, just thinking about that, like, it's just, not that I don't want to think about it. She did mention having a bag of finger bones. It's true, but I think if she's going to glamour as Davos, I think it would be for a different reason. Like, maybe it would be for, maybe, like, Shireen needs to trust, like, Davos, so Melisandre glamours to get her trust on something. But, like, I don't think it makes sense for her to glamour as Davos to then burn her, because nobody's going in their right mind to believe that Davos burned Shireen. Like, and also Davos is on his own secret mission, so I don't think if she's going to glamour as Davos, it's not going to be for that reason. I don't think. Yes, Ashley, like what you mentioned, that it's a possible, like, okay, you're killing Shireen so Jon comes back into his body. Yes, I think that's very possible. Especially think about what Melisandre is going to know. Melisandre is going to know Jon Snow is dead. She's getting news that Stannis Baratheon is also going to be dead. The pink letter just came to Winterfell, or not Winterfell, Castle Black. So she's going to believe that both the people that she's tied to, Stannis and Jon, are both dead. So, yeah, I very easily could see that Melisandre is the person that's very desperate, and she tries very desperate action and, gets rid of Shireen. That makes a lot of sense to me. Here's the problem with Thoros. Thoros, it seems like he just kind of got lucky with bringing Beric back as many times as he was. We're not given really any evidence that he can glamour, but I wouldn't, like, count it out. Speaking of later season, or bad later seasons, what was more contrived, the Arya-Sansa rivalry or Viserys betraying and getting burned in about 3 minutes of screen time? So, I think that Varys betraying Daenerys makes a lot of sense given the route they went with Daenerys' character. Like, that's just built into Viserys. He betrays people when he sees them as not good rulers. I just think that it wasn't handled the best. Like, specifically from Daenerys' arc, and the way Varys gets caught. The way Varys gets caught, and also the way it's executed with Daenerys, is bad. But Sansa and Arya is some of the worst writing I've ever seen. Like, it is terrible. So I would say Sansa and Arya. Will we ever see the Winds of Winter? Doubtful. I think that eventually we'll see some part of it. I don't know if it'll ever be completed, like in terms of like George releasing one huge book or two full like split books that are one story. I don't know if we're ever going to get that. I think that we'll get at least what George has written. Like, I think we'll see the conclusion of Dance from whatever writing he has. I think we'll see some of like what he has for these storylines, kind of like a Tolkien situation. Like, we'll eventually get what he had, like the letters, right, that Tolkien had. But I don't know if we're ever gonna see it. I I don't know. George has not given me a lot of faith that he can complete it. So, April, I mean more like in the show with that with the convoluted stuff in season 7 with Arya and Sansa. Ashley, I'll have to look back on the Stannis stuff. I'm not as fresh on the House of the Undying stuff. I haven't read the House of the Undying chapter in a long time up to this point. So I'll have to read it again. But I just personally don't see in terms of where the story is right now that Stannis and Daenerys meeting makes sense or is going to happen. So, yeah, I don't know. But thank you guys for watching the live stream, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Hope you guys all enjoyed our little chat about Stannis. There were some good ideas in here about future videos, good discussion. But I hope you guys all enjoy, and I'll see you guys all in the next couple videos. I've got them all out, so members, enjoy those early. But yeah, bye guys.